Good afternoon, friends. Let me first up thanks Mr. Srinivasa Addepalli to come here and accept our proposal to be a guest, to be a speaker for our speaker series. Mr. Addepalli, he is an independent strategy consultant, and strategy is a buzzword for term 2. So therefore, I think so his session is the most appropriate, I guess. And before this, he was the Chief Strategy Officer in TATA Communications. He was responsible for strategic development and execution, and he has considerable experience in merger and acquisition, integration, and the cross-border acquisitions. And he has managed various multinational acquisitions while he was in TATA Communications. Mr. Addepalli is the recipient of the top 40 global telecom executives under the age of 40, given by Global Telecom Business. And that is for 3 consecutive years, 2010, 2011, and 2012. He is an IIM alumni, class of 1999. He has done his PGPX from here. And before that, he has completed his electronic engineering from NIT. So without much ado, I will request Mr. Addepalli to come in.
Thank you. So I've been asked to speak about various topics, and I was told that strategy is a buzzword, and that's the reason that you're all very excited about hearing me speak. So I hope I can fulfill some of your expectations about strategy. Let me just touch upon what I've been doing in the last few years since I left campus, so it may provide some context to what I talk about. I joined the Tata Group in 1999 after doing my MBA here, and I was a strategy consultant, worked with Tata Strategic Management Group for a few years. And then I was focused on telecom and media industries. I moved to the Tata Group Chairman's office, so Mr. Tata's office, focusing on telecom, so looking at the Tata Group's telecom strategy as a whole. And during that period, I was responsible for the acquisition, the Tata Group's acquisition, not responsible, sorry. I was involved at that time. I was still too young to be responsible. But I was closely involved with the Tata Group's acquisition of VSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited in 2002, which was then renamed as Tata Communications. As part of Mr. Tata's office, I worked on various things, but that included some acquisitions on behalf of VSNL. Some of the global expansion that the company did. When I finished those acquisitions, I was told, you'll be responsible for the mess that you've created, so go and now build the strategy and the implementation that is required now that we've made these acquisitions. So I moved to Tata Communications in 2006, and for 8 years I was responsible for creating the strategy function there and building out the entire strategy and execution function. In addition, I've done corporate marketing, branding, regulation, and a variety of other things that no one else wanted to do in the company. Right? So usually strategy in most companies is so undefined that any other function doesn't want to do something, strategy is the place it goes to. But perhaps over the 8-year period, I helped create the foundations of what the strategy function should be. And hopefully I've left it in good shape for my successor who came in middle of 2014. I left my job last year to pursue my personal interest in teaching. So I'm now doing mostly management education, both in the corporate sector, so where I do leadership training programs on strategy and other related areas. And also teach whenever I'm invited to in B schools and other academic institutions. At IIM, I've been offering a course on cross-border mergers and acquisitions since the last 3 years, and that's something that will be offered later this year for your batch too. So, and right now I'm on campus also to teach a session at PGP on a course on strategy consulting. So I've co-written a case with Professor Sharma, and that case is being taught today and tomorrow. So that's kind of a little bit of who I am and why I'm here. So as you know, M&A is what I've done a lot in my 15 years, almost 15 years at work. So I will speak a bit about M&A, and I'll also talk a bit about technology, the technology industry and what's changing, and what are some of my views about the new opportunities that will get created in the technology industry. I understand that a large number of you are from the technology background and probably have a much better understanding of technology per se than I do, but what I will speak about is the implications that I see for business leaders, for large enterprises, for global enterprises. So I hope it will be more of a discussion rather than just me sharing kind of a monologue there. And finally, I've been asked to share what it is to work in a global Indian organization. Right? So what does it take to create a global Indian organization? So maybe a few minutes on that. So that's a kind of a big agenda for the day, but I'll get started. So M&A. As a lot of people want to do M&A, and M&A is a big buzzword. It's cooled down a bit. A few years ago, it was very hot when the Indian economy was booming. Every Indian company was making multi-billion-dollar global acquisitions. Everyone has wanted to do mergers and acquisitions. And I'll share three perspectives that I have picked up over the last many years. The first is that M&A is not something that's standalone. Okay? M&A is not a function. M&A is not one activity that is done by a corporate. Yes, it's it's something that happens in most corporates, but I see M&A as essentially implementation of strategy, or in the process of creating and executing strategy. M&A is one of the options that any enterprise considers. And I think that distinction is very critical, because the moment you start thinking of M&A as an outcome in itself, and we are good at M&A, we want to do M&A, there's an M&A function, there's an M&A team. If you have an M&A team, what is their purpose? They have to do M&A. They will push for acquisitions to be done. So I have never, as part of the strategy team, never had M&A as any of my KRAs. Right? It was not written into my job description. The job description was building the strategy and helping implement the strategy. M&A just happened to be one of the routes that we employed to kind of grow faster and build our strategy out faster. Let me give you an example of one deal, and I'll use that even for my second thing, so there's a little bit of an example there. TATA Communications, the original business, many of you are probably aware, was in international voice services. It was the gateway to and out of India, carrying voice minutes. Before it was privatized, it was a monopoly carrier, the only operator who was allowed to bring international voice minutes into the country and take it out. After the monopoly ended and privatization happened, the market kind of collapsed, as you can imagine. Revenues were down almost 80% and profits were down 90%, and it was a matter of 3 years. So what we were staring at was imminent kind of death of that business. Okay? Now it was not that we hadn't planned it. Right? When we built our acquisition case, we knew that the end of a monopoly always results in prices declining and competition taking away market share. But we didn't expect that it would happen so fast. International benchmarks had shown that it takes 6 to 8 years before you lose 50% market share. But we were down 50% market share in the first 3 years. Right? Prices had fallen 80% within the first 4 years. It hadn't happened anywhere else in the world. Right? So it was dramatic, and this is one of the lessons you may take away. Most valuation models, business cases all go wrong. Right? So you have to then prepare for unforeseen things. So what do you do in such a situation? And indeed, at that point, many of us were thinking, let's shut this business down, or let's just sell whatever is remaining, because what can you do with a business that's built on high fixed cost, and you suddenly lost all your revenues or large part of your revenues? It is going to be loss making, and costs are very difficult to take out, and particularly for a former public sector company has built its entire infrastructure and costs on kind of a gold-plated basis. It is difficult to change these things overnight. I'm not saying we didn't work on cost. There's a lot of cost reduction happened, but it's never going to be enough to take a 80% revenue cut impact. So the alternative was for us to try and look at other markets beyond India. As you can see, VSNL or Tata Communications was only doing India in and out traffic. No, it was not carrying traffic that originated or terminated in any other country. Right? So it was all, one end had to be India. But the infrastructure that we had created, the capabilities that we had created could be used to carry traffic from point A to point B that didn't involve India too. A large part of that infrastructure and people and systems could be reused. So we said, okay, let's go and capture traffic from other markets. Why are we only focused on the India market? Maybe that way we will get some scale on our fixed costs. We tried, several attempts were made. We entered Sri Lanka, we took a license in the US, we took a license in the UK, we took a license in Hong Kong. So all the markets where licenses were freely available, we went and applied, put some infrastructure, put a person and said, start selling. But as you can imagine, it didn't bear much result. Why? One, we weren't known to be good at that. Right? There's already a highly competitive market. Suddenly we come in and take a license and put some switch there, doesn't mean people are going to give us traffic. They already were doing business with others. We weren't known to be kind of a global player. We were known to be Indian company, and we were not very well regarded at it because we were a monopoly and we had kind of exerted our monopoly power for the last 10 years. So carriers knew us, but they didn't want to do business with us, and at least not very willingly in other markets. So it started to show some results, but not enough. So we realized that the organic way of trying to add traffic to our network was not going to be fast enough to cover the cost that we were sitting on. So the only kind of alternative was that we had to acquire that traffic very quickly and start loading our network with that traffic. And so when this whole strategy thing was going on, and the second kind of learning that you may think about is that most M&A is accidental. Most M&A is rarely planned too much. So we knew that we had to expand our global network fast, but it was not that we were seeking to acquire. Right? We were still a bit scared. We were an Indian company, former public sector. You can imagine you're not kind of, yeah, let's go acquire a company type of attitude. And a whole bunch of chance conversations with some people, this and that, led to our knowledge that a company called Teleglobe, which was headquartered in Montreal in Canada, was probably going to get sold by its private equity investors. The whole accident fortune thing. The CEO or the COO of that company was someone who had worked with the Tata Group about 5 years earlier. Right? He had represented Bell Canada when they had a partnership with the Tata Group in late 90s, and he had worked with the Tata Group. Then he went back and he had become the CEO of Teleglobe. So you also suddenly start, oh, there's a connection here, that guy, and you start to have a conversation with him. And then, of course, the private equity investors realize that if they just have bilateral conversations, they'll not get the best value, so they kind of started a formal sale process. And when we bid for the company, we were, as again a typical Indian company attitude, we bid low. We were trying to see if we can get it cheap, but there was someone else, and clearly there was one other party. We think it was another large Indian telecom company, but we don't know for sure, who clearly bid above us. Just before that, we had finished acquiring one submarine cable network called Tyco Global Network. So we had started to announce our intentions to this was kind of happening a little bit in parallel, to kind of become global. And so Indian competitors said, and Reliance had acquired Flag a year earlier, 2003. So it was a little bit of a hotting up race amongst the Indian telcos that you have to become global, or you have to do something outside India. So there was somebody else, I'm not going to say who it is, who it could have been, but you can guess, was obviously aggressively bidding against us. And here's where I think the strategy element paid out quite well. Because for us, we were very clear about the economics of the business, and we understood the economics, and we knew that that adding this extra traffic, there's a lot of other good things that Teleglobe had. They were really amongst the best players in the world in terms of their capabilities, technology, systems. So we really wanted that. If we had to acquire someone, Teleglobe was the company to acquire. But because of our deep understanding of the economics of the business and the need for scale, right? This is not an opportunistic, here's a deal happening, everyone else is becoming global, let's also bid and try and become international. No, for us this was do or die. We knew the exact numbers, the benefits of acquisition, the synergies that we would get. We were able to kind of bid over what the M&A guys call that one extra bid, which causes you to kind of seal the deal and in the last minute, and we got the we won the bidding, and it was a public company, it was a publicly listed company, so there was no chance of them deciding without us being the highest bidder. And clearly, and when I look back at the numbers that we ran, everything else, we had the confidence to bid high, and it was really high compared to what the company was trading at. I think it was 60 or 70% premium, but we got that confidence only because it was driven from strategy. Right? We knew that we had to make an acquisition or become global, otherwise we wouldn't survive. But I do believe that if it was not so strategic, we wouldn't have gone over and said, let's just bid. And please imagine a Tata Group company with government directors on our board, as conservative as it can get, although things may have changed later, but in 2005-06 it was very conservative in terms of our M&A decision making. It was not just the strategy element that caused us to be so confident and aggressive. I think the second thing that helped us, and that's my second learning from M&As, is the importance of integration. Okay? You probably heard it many times that integration is very important and so on. But a lot of people think of integration of a deal or integration of a merger or an acquisition as a post-acquisition activity. Right? So even the whole thing, post-merger integration is a phrase that used. A lot of consultants do all this work around it. So because it is actually implemented post-merger, people think that integration work and thinking happens post-merger. And it's been my experience and learning that you have to start thinking of integration the day you start thinking of the acquisition. Almost from there. Because if your acquisition is strategic, you have to have a clear view when and if and when the deal gets done, how will the combined entity look like? What do you intend to do with this acquisition that you are pursuing? If it's not something that you can say, let's acquire the company and then we'll figure out how to use those people, how to use that technology and so on. No, you need to know that upfront, because that's what in many ways helps you build your valuation model. If I don't know how I'm going to use the company that I'm acquiring, how do I value it? How do I build synergies? How do I calculate future costs? I can't treat, if you're a private equity investor, okay, you obviously think of it standalone, you don't have to think about any integration and so on. But if you're a strategic investor whose role is, whose purpose is to kind of make it part of one combined entity, use that business to forward your strategy, you need to think of the integration on pretty much day one. Now, it doesn't mean that even before you started bidding, you're doing a lot of integration plans. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you have to build out detailed plans. But you have to have very clear ideas of what the contours of the future business would look like. Where would you place it? Who would it report to broadly? Right? What kind of system choices are you likely to take? Because that will tell you what costs will remain, what costs can be taken out, what new revenues can you create, what revenues may go away. So if you only when you understand those upfront can you build your valuation model. The other thing is that you start to then also, you get that lead time, particularly as your deal is progressing, you know that you are very likely to get it. If you have started the planning of integration, you get those extra month, 2 months to take decisions. Because one of the things that I've seen, particularly in cross-border acquisitions, is a lot of uncertainty, particularly of the target company or the acquired company management. Now, they don't know what's going to happen, and between a deal signing and closing, usually several months because of all regulatory approvals, that's the period when the good people leave, because they say, no, we don't know what's going to happen, we don't know what these guys are going to do with us, let's go find new jobs. But if your integration plan is in place, on day one when you sign, you can call the people and say, here's what we intend to do with this company, here's how you will play a role in the larger entity. You can give confidence to them, you help them, think of their career progression during this period of uncertainty. And now going back to the Teleglobe valuation case, now broadly the way it worked, that our initial round of bidding, we maxed out our base case. Okay, so we built a base case. Here's the business value on a standalone basis, right? As if we didn't acquire it. What's the business value of Teleglobe on its own? Then we had worked on a whole lot of synergies. And again, because of our understanding of the economics, and we were already in the business, the scale benefits that we were getting, our synergies were pretty big. The value of the synergies was pretty big. But we maxed out our base case, but we still were not close to winning. And then we had to up the bid. The only way that could be done was if we started to dip into the synergies. Right? And there the question was, how confident are you about the synergies? Because synergies is a place where a lot of valuation teams or the bankers kind of bullshit a bit. Okay, you can make nice synergies because synergies will come later. Who knows? And then you can always find excuses why the synergies didn't happen. So synergies is a place where you kind of use them as the joker cards of your valuation and kind of, as I say, ghosa some numbers. So so the boards, or even a CEO or a board should be very wary when someone comes and says, oh, we have a lot of synergies, let's pay from our synergies, because synergies are supposed to be your upside, and if you are sharing your upside, then at some point what are you doing this deal for, and what are you left with? If you're going, so if someone says, oh, NPV is 0, it's good. I'm saying, if NPV is 0, you should be indifferent to doing the deal. The reason you do a deal is to get some nice big positive NPV. If you're sharing large chunks of it, then what's the point of doing a deal? So, but because of our thinking of integration from before, we were able to demonstrate why the cost savings that we were talking about were real. Right? So when you go and say, here's how the teams will be structured, here's the overlapping teams, these are the people that we think can be moved to India, here's what can be done, here's how we will redeploy resources, here's the number of people we will have to ask to leave. No, it's not theoretical. It's not saying, oh, they have 800 people, let's assume 25% of them will have to be redeployed. No, we could say, here's a function, here's a sub-function that will move, here's the actual cost that they incur in Montreal, here's the cost that it would take us in India if we had to do the same activities, here's the saving. Right? So it becomes real when you have thought through the integration. And I think we ended up paying close to 50% of the synergy value in our final bid. Right? So we shared 50% to the sellers. Good thing is, when we tested this deal was in 2006-07. By 2011-12, when I looked back on this, the actual synergies that we created were probably 3 times what we estimated. Okay. So, and I would put the synergy overachievement purely due to the fact that our integration was done really very well. Amongst the key management team, and remember I told you that one of the big reasons why we wanted Teleglobe was its capabilities, its systems, its people who were very well regarded in the industry. Almost none of them left the company. Even today, they're all there. Right? They are as integrated into Tata Communications as anyone can be. In fact, the head of the business there, he jokes, I must have been an Indian in my previous births, that's why I feel so one with you guys. So, and the other interesting nugget of the style of integration that we did, remember voice, this voice business was Tata Communications core business. This is what we were doing as our business mostly. We had started data and other things around that time, but voice was the core business. So the anticipation was in the Indian voice team that, oh, we are acquiring this global company, and they'll all report to us, we'll have this big company. Isn't that the way an acquiring company management team would think? All these guys will report, you're starting to think, oh, okay, I'll be the boss of now such a big entity and there's $1 billion more of revenues coming. So that's how the senior members of the voice team started to imagine it. But our decision was very clear. It was, as I said, it was done before we had done the deal itself, that the voice business for Tata Communications would be headed by the Teleglobe team. It would be headed by the person who was running it for Teleglobe. India would become one more geography in their global organization structure. They had a global organization structure because they ran it as a global team. They had multiple regions. They said India is one more region in that structure. This, for many people, for many senior people also, it was a kind of a shock and a surprise. How can we are the acquiring company, how can we report to those guys in Montreal, So no, it's very clear that for our strategy of being a global voice player, to succeed, we need those capabilities, we need the systems. They are surely much better at this business than we are, and therefore they should run the business. They, in a sense, the leadership team there, but then it's not part of, you're part of that team, right? So the person who was running the voice business in India, who was reporting to the CEO, started reporting to the senior most person from Teleglobe. They also had other businesses which were in the data area and so on, where they were not so good. Those teams reported to other relevant teams in Tata Communications. So we didn't use this that, oh, we are the acquiring company and therefore you shall report to us attitude. So where the business needs to be integrated in a different way, we'll focus there. Now the voice, and I think that probably if I had to pick one reason why we blew our synergy achievement 3 times the plan, I think this decision probably was the kind of the biggest decision. The third perspective or learning from my M&A journey. M&A from the outside, from when you read articles that appear in the newspapers or magazines and all the talk that happens and fast flying to New York for meetings with the lawyers and so on, it sounds like a very exciting, sexy job to do. Wow, I want to do M&A. I can tell you, having done this for many years or observing those who do it for many years, it's as much hard work, as boring and as sometimes fruitless as probably any other job. Okay? One of my team members who was doing a lot of M&A and who were trained in M&A. So as I said, while we don't have M&A as a function, or we didn't have M&A as a function separately, obviously you have people who specialize in it because there's a lot of learnings that you apply across deals. She used to joke, and she had finished 3 years in the team, and said, Srini, I've evaluated so many deals, but we haven't done even one. When I write my resume, can I say that I've done at least one deal in 3 years? What kind of an M&A manager am I if I can't do one deal in 3 years? And I said, maybe that's what you should be proud of, that as part of the team we evaluated so many and we rejected so many. Right? We didn't kind of say, oh, let's get a deal done and let's do something just for the sake of doing a deal. But that's sometimes the kind of hard work that goes in with sometimes no results to show, and the result in a traditional metric of I've done so many deals and I've so many $1 million of deals is what is in my kitty. No, particularly from a corporate side, your job. But again, if you go back to my first point, that it is strategy that's driving your action. M&A deals done or is not the way you look at your things. It's the value that you add to the business, how you help the business identify some opportunities or reject opportunities that otherwise somebody else may have jumped into. But it does involve a lot of work, and typically the area of M&A covers a wide range of knowledge that is required. You need to have a pretty good understanding of your business, your industry, the business and the economics of running that business. If you're in a technology space, you need to have fairly good understanding of technology and so on, because a lot of cost and being able to model costs, synergies and operations. You can't say, I don't understand what this is and model costs. So financial modeling is not about being a crack guru at Excel. Right? It's about being able to understand what are the business drivers, what are the technology, how revenue gets built, how costs get built out, how technology choices can help create synergy. Right? So very good understanding of the business is very important. Equally, there's a lot of work that's involved in the regulatory legal space, because I feel that I'm like half lawyer. I haven't studied law, but I can read a contract and can identify 50-60. I'm talking of business M&A type of contracts, and identify 50-60% of the issues that our M&A lawyers can. Right? You have to, because one of the big things is that lawyers are paid to keep you safe. Right? They will never take risks. They will not want you to take too much risk. But as a business manager, you have to take the risk. At the end of the day, if you want to be too safe, then you can't do anything. Right? Being the most safe thing is to sit at home and not do anything. So if you have to do a deal, if you have to do something, you have to be willing to take calls, and that call can only happen if you have a reasonably good understanding of what the issues involved are. So the lawyers kind of throw a lot of jargon at you. If you're not able to answer back in the same jargon and find a solution, you'll often find two lawyers of two sides will keep fighting with each other, and many principals are sitting there with no clue, and they're not able to get a business resolution to the issue, because the lawyers, by the way, more they fight, more hours they're billing somewhere, right? And charging you. So they love to send versions of documents back and forth and nitpick over small things. I'm not saying they do it kind of consciously, very unconsciously. That's built into their thing. That sorry, any lawyers here? No, not you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So that's the so therefore it's a lot of rigor, a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of numbers. So don't think of M&A as one of these very exciting. If you want to pursue a career in M&A, great. There's a lot. Try my course coming later in the year. A little bit of a pitch for that. But do remember that it's about hard work. It's not. Yeah, it's a banker, and particularly if you're in the corporate side M&A, you do all this hard work, you don't get some big success fee or a carry at the end of it, like a private equity person might, or a banker might. You go back and do the next thing, and you get your salary and bonus at the end of the year. So particularly on the corporate side, doing M&A is not like the most exciting things. But I do think, as part of strategy, I have found M&A as a tool, if employed well, can do wonders for a company. Just take Tata Communications, as I said, a public sector monopoly in 2002. That was kind of, people were writing it off. In fact, I think a year later, one of the newspapers called it the Tatas have got a lemon. In looking back at the VSNL deal, today in 2014, it's regarded as a global leader. In fact, in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for network service providers, global network service providers, it's a leader, even though its size in terms of revenues and so on is probably a tenth of the other leaders, right? So small company, but really proven itself in the global arena, and a lot of that has come about by using M&A very effectively at the right times, and then consolidating on top of that. We haven't done, or I keep saying we, I'm saying my previous employer hasn't done much M&A in the last few years. There's one divestment that was done recently. Okay, so that's my M&A story. I know. So I'll touch on the technology thing, and then we'll take a break and get some questions in. So in technology, you all know this, and the biggest trend that everyone speaks about is the growth of mobility and the growth of cloud computing. Right? I think mobile growth, particularly in mobile data growth, is very largely underestimated, particularly in India. I do a session and where I ask people to kind of forecast the mobile broadband population for India in 2020. Okay. And I get numbers ranging from 300 million to 500, 700, 500, 600 million. One group out of 20 that I have done till now came up with a number of more than a billion. Okay, on a population of about, they said 1.4 or 1.5 billion people in India by then. I was amazed because no one else had come so close. Most people topped out at 675 or 700. And I was trying to examine how they came to that number, and I think one or two points that they made, and I truly believe that. Said, why should we assume that in 2020 everyone who has a phone today will not have a smartphone in their hands? Just look around, the low-cost smartphones that are coming in. People who, the same way that people underestimated mobile phones, the voice uptake in India in 99-2000. I think we are in the same position. People are thinking we are being very elitist in the way we think about who will use mobile data in future. I remember in 99 when I first modeled the population of mobile phones in India in 2005, I said 7 million people will buy mobile phones in 2005. Right? It was 70 million that year. Okay. So I think we are taking the same elitist view to why and who will pick up mobile broadband data or smartphones and mobile data 6 years hence. I think there's a huge explosion waiting to happen. The other thing that people are discounting is we are still thinking people. We are thinking population of India and trying to derive penetration of population. I think there will be more devices and non-living beings that will be using mobile broadband data than there are going to be people. Okay. So already the statistic today, there are devices, they are not yet broadband mobile connected devices, that nearly 2.5 to 3 devices per person in the enterprise, just the workplace. Every employee is carrying 2.7 to 3 devices into the workplace. Not their own, maybe it's a connected printer. So connected devices, network devices are about 2.7 per head. Okay, and that is expected to by 2015 or so rise to about 7 in the enterprise. So, and just think of the house, the number of connected devices that you have in the house. So I think the mobile broadband explosion, because the only one probable cause for it not to happen could be policy. Okay, that's the only risk that I see. Risk is not of market or affordability or availability of content or devices. The only risk to that happening is policy. Okay, if spectrum is withheld or spectrum is kind of auctioned in a very restricted manner, which causes just the loss to the industry to become too high, I think that's the only risk. Otherwise, there's a huge explosion of mobile that's waiting to happen. The second is cloud computing. I think there's and we've seen this everywhere else in the world. India has had a good history of people leapfrogging. Right? Something was not available, it doesn't mean that you wait for it and then move to the next generation. You kind of start with the next generation. Wireless before wireline. Wireline was not there, so wireless came in. Cable TV was not so good enough, satellite TV. In many other countries, the next generation came in after the first generation had kind of topped out, and it came as a progression. In India, we are kind of usually leapfrogging the previous generation. I think in the enterprise, the small, mid, and even larger enterprises that today do not use enough IT, software to manage their businesses, they're all going to leapfrog the enterprise software, which has now been restricted only to the very large enterprises, using cloud computing. So why don't they adopt IT today? One, it's too expensive usually. Upfront investment in software and hardware that is required for them to create any fairly usable enterprise software. Two, skilled manpower to manage the infrastructure. When an IT service provider is paying a person lots of money, imagine a small business being able to hire a IT guy. Any guy who is trained in IT, his first thing is going to go look to get a job in a IT company? Who will work in a small business and say, I'll be your IT manager? So the cost of having people to manage your IT is very high. And the third, which again is a government policy, but I'm seeing signs of movement there, is black money. Okay? The moment you put something on an IT system, you use IT software for billing and your ERP, you are making it all traceable. So most small businesses don't want to use system because they write on that, they'll burn the paper if they want to and not pay income tax. Right? So black money and the cash economy is also aiding it, but I can see a lot of the signs of change in the government policy there to shift away from cash type of economy, forcing tax, the tax net wider. That will help. So if you take all these three, cloud computing or availability of enterprise software. So when people think of cloud and so on, everyone thinks Facebook and all the consumer applications, but I see a really dramatic opportunities in enterprise cloud computing, in creating applications that small businesses can use to run their business more productively and efficiently. Right? Using the mobile as the primary device, not the computer. Okay? Mobile based enterprise applications is a huge opportunity in India, taking into account the Indian context of how business is done, how money moves, how cash moves, credit systems. Because adopting a US based kind of a Salesforce.com or equivalent or a CRM from there is not going to work for India. Because the processes are not as rigid. There's a lot of variations to those processes, and you find that the Indian small businesses will adopt if they find the right application. So that I see as like, and I come from a kind of enterprise view to it because TATA Communications is very enterprise focused. So I look at what are the opportunities in enterprise or business customers. And I see this as, if you can create some interesting applications bundled with a device, for instance. That's my other hypothesis on the technology space is the operators, okay, the telecom operators that as we see them are going to become pure commodity infrastructure providers. Right? I can't see any one of them creating value beyond getting utility returns for their plumbing. Okay? And that's because the way I see it is a smart application provider or a smart device guy is going to find a way to make the network invisible to the customer. Okay? If you can make the network invisible to the customer, saying here's a device, just think of an automobile, I'm taking a big device and a big thing. Think of an automobile that's some Tata Motors or anyone, Mahindra sells a connected car. Where a SIM is built in and the monthly or whatever annual charges for the telecom connectivity are paid by Tata Motors, but they say here's your connected car, and but we will provide you diagnostics, we will collect diagnostics from it, we will provide you latest maps and so on, and maybe we'll charge you a monthly fee after 2 years to be part of our service. So you have a connected telecom connected mobile broadband connection there, but the operator, the customer doesn't know that what technology is being used. Is it 3G, 4G, is there a SIM or is there a dongle? It doesn't matter to the customer. So imagine all device manufacturers. The device is not just there for me the handset or the tablet. It is health devices, it's education devices, it's automobiles, it's refrigerators, home appliances. All of them which can be connected can become direct customers of mobile operators and take the network out of the customer's knowledge. Is it very crazy? No, it's been done many years ago. Okay, Kindle did it. So if you bought a 3G Kindle or the old Kindle, I don't know, I haven't been following the Kindle, all the various models, but one of the Kindles that I purchased several years ago, at the 3G Kindle, you didn't have to, there was an AT&T SIM in it with free global roaming. So essentially, why would that Kindle connect to the network? To download a book. Okay, so when you download a book or purchase a book, Amazon is making money, and so they are willing to, for the 100 KB or 400 KB that was downloaded when the book was thing, they were probably willing to pay AT&T on some per meg basis or something. So the customer didn't have to take a 3G connection. It was built into the Kindle, and since they didn't even have to ask you to pay an annual fee, because they were making money every time you purchase content from the Kindle store, and so it's been done, right? So this idea has been done before, so I can see no reason why it can't be done. Now I've come from an operator side, so it's a little crazy situation for the operators, the mobile operators or the ISPs, to imagine that their interface with the customer will go away. And but I predict that will happen. The only thing that can protect them is some form of regulation. The regulation that forces that if you have to sell a SIM, you have to have customer application form with 2 photographs and proof of ID and something. So that's the only thing that can make the mobile operator know who the end customer is. Otherwise, I can see it becoming mobile operators becoming wholesale B2B providers to the devices. Not all, I'm saying there will still be the direct B2C business, but some of the growth that we see from devices can move to the B2B model. So those are my 2 kind of big themes for technology in India. The explosion that's waiting to happen in the mobile and cloud computing, particularly the opportunity in enterprise applications, and 2, the huge risk that the telecom operators carry of becoming invisible to the end customer, or large parts becoming invisible to the end customer. I'll take a break here and see if there are any questions.
My question is that you talked about you acquired BSNL, then you didn't, you thought you'll go to Sri Lanka. You didn't find customers, you decided you're going to do an M&A, right? So is it really trial and error which gets published as strategy in case studies? Second, continuation to that, for example, you put a spin on that we decided on having an expat run the new business. Was it really the point that he didn't want to be subsumed to an Indian manager? Because in case of I worked in RBS and ABN AMRO acquisition, one of the reasons it failed was that ABN guys, the Netherlands guys, didn't want to work with English people. So is it really the trial and error since you have lived this life? Or is it really a strategy that you work on?
So you're asking me to disclose the dirty, deep secrets that all managers have. So obviously strategy cases, okay, what you read in the cases are those that people have decided to share, okay, and usually a lot of the good stories are those that people have said, this is a good story, so I'm willing to share. The negative or those that didn't work are those that somebody wrote by figuring out that something didn't work, right? So I don't disagree that the strategy cases that you read are probably a kind of a unrealistic sample of how life in reality is. Okay, so this is a kind of a very skewed sample because it's by choice. It's not cases that are written in random about all the possible decisions that are happening. Okay, so but I don't want to use the cases, and because I am also writing cases and I've written a few cases on strategy and so on. I think the purpose of cases is to not to show that something went well or wrong. Okay, the purpose of the case is to help think through decision making process. Okay, not to showcase somebody doing well or not. So even yes, I talked of the Telugu. I can, if I have time, I'll tell you all the failures, all the wrong things that we did, but which are all learning experiences to prevent in future. But the trial and error part, see, there's no doubt that management in many ways ends up being some form of a trial and error. Okay, trial and error in the sense that you have a view, you have a plan, you think of something, and only when you do it will you know whether it works or not, because many of the factors are not solely in your hand. You have to depend on external factors as well as other people kind of falling into place in the way you plan, and particularly if you take over time, it's like saying, can you really crystal gaze and determine how the future will look like? So a lot of plans end up having to be modified as you implement them. Okay, but just to answer the specific questions you did, see, and the Tata Communications or the VSNL story of trying a few things, yes, it was a bit of a trial and error because we didn't know any better. just think of the situation that we were in. This is as I said, we were learning. There was a lot of people who were trying to figure out what to do because the industry and the context around us was changing very dramatically. It was not the way we thought it would be. So you had to come up with ideas and try a few of them. Some worked, some didn't. But on the specific point of the integration and the reporting, that I think was clearly planned. Okay? That is how we wanted it. It was not that, see, as I said, there were people in Teleglobe, senior people who were in other groups who reported to Tata Communications people. And today, by the way, the Tata Communications organization is such that the CEO lives in Singapore, the CFO is in Delhi, the CTO is in New Jersey, the voice business head is in Montreal, the data business head is in Mumbai. They have teams that are global in nature. There are foreigners, and nobody is called an expat because India is not a headquarter. It is a global company. So everybody is an expat or everybody is a domestic, right, in a sense. So people report across nationalities, across time zones. So, and that has been created consciously from then onwards. Okay. So I don't think it was that if we hadn't done that, he would have quit. Okay. I think knowing him now as well as I do now, that I don't think he would have quit even then. Right? He would have probably said, I'll make it work, right, that way. But we felt it was the right thing for the company. But let me just use that to make another point on plans, right? Because the way management works or way in reality it works, so you make a plan and then you implement it. And I've built many strategic plans, long-term plans. Every year we build a strategic plan or update one. I feel the day the strategic plan is prepared, it is outdated. Okay? By the day you say my strategic plan is done, it is wrong. Because by the time you started and you put the finishing touches to it, the world has changed in those 3 months. Okay? So for me the strategic plan is not a cast in stone, here's what we will do and we think we should do in future. The purpose of the strategic plan is to set one scenario or one view of what the future will look like, what we think is the most likely view of the future. Okay? But more important in the strategic plan preparation is the assumptions that go into it, a shared understanding of what will make what happen, and if those things change, what needs to change if we see the plan not happening. Right? So for me that's the more important part of the strategic planning process than the creation of a plan itself, because that plan, I can't think of any plan that I've prepared that has been accurate. Either it's been overachieved or underachieved, but rarely have we said the same numbers have happened for the next 3 years as we predicted 3 years ago. Never. It doesn't happen. But the preparation of the plan gives us good insight into what the drivers are, what is likely to happen, and prepares us for meeting that uncertainty.
So you said you have helped set up the strategy center, strategy division. So how do you see what should be a strategy division or what should a strategic consultant really do? I mean, apart.
So strategy consultant would be different. Strategy consultant would be someone who comes in from the outside. But in the strategy within a company, there's a lot of ways you can do it depending on the nature of the company. At Tata Communications, we created a corporate strategy function, which was one team that reported to the CEO, and that was responsible for developing the strategy of the company as a whole, and also worked with the business units, the respective business units, to develop their business strategy. And strategy has to function at 2 levels. There's a corporate strategy and there's a business unit strategy. Many companies create different teams for the business unit strategy. Right? And the business unit strategy develops their business strategy, and the corporate strategy kind of aggregates it and also challenges it. Say, this is not sufficient, right? To meet our corporate goals, your plan is not good enough. So there's usually a healthy debate between business strategy and corporate strategy to create something that that's acceptable to both the business unit and to the corporate stakeholders. But as I said, it also depends on how many people you can afford, what's the size. Having one single team gives you benefit of having one team. You don't have to put 1-2 people each. Career planning for those people is better if they're in one group. So
sometimes in the recent past we have seen that the valuations don't add up. For example, the recent acquisition of WhatsApp by Facebook, several valuation experts were criticizing because the numbers just don't add up. Putting yourself in Zuckerberg's shoes, how do you think he planned this all out?
Too big or small shoes for me to fit into. Big, metaphorically, small, probably physically. In fact, on my blog, I've written on the WhatsApp valuation itself. See, for me, particularly since they paid a large chunk of it using paper, okay. So you have to think of it as a relative valuation. Okay? Facebook is overvalued, so you can overvalue WhatsApp. See, when it's a paper acquisition, you apply the same principles to both. Okay, but for me, the way again thinking strategy, right? For me, valuation is just okay. Valuation is in the eyes of the beholder, in a sense. It is what the two parties felt was good enough for both, right? But strategically, I see this as a huge defensive move. Defensive in the sense that if Facebook doesn't have WhatsApp, they are potentially losing the future conversations from their platform. Okay? You can see increasingly the large chunks of conversations. Okay? And Facebook is about getting people to socialize, right? Have conversations, engagement, share. All of you must be observing it and experiencing. WhatsApp had become the kind of almost the default conversation place for small identified groups. Okay, Facebook became your public profile that you kind of created your impression, and WhatsApp was becoming where people had conversations. And if Facebook's strategy is that we want to be the platform where people engage with each other, not having a WhatsApp, they tried Facebook Messenger. They built up Facebook Messenger. It didn't work. If it doesn't work, acquire the leader. That's the approach, right? We have to have that conversation platform. Messenger in-house didn't work, so you go acquire the biggest guy out there and build that as the future platform. And that's why they're not integrating it. They're not trying to kind of collapse it, because they know that if they collapse it into Facebook, it'll die. Many acquisitions in technology space get collapsed very quickly, but here they are not going to collapse it for a while, because this platform probably will become a unique independent platform on its own. I don't know, but I think that has to be their view.
So such a defensive move will also make financial sense?
As I said, financial sense is if you can afford to pay, you pay. See, valuation, there is no right valuation. Valuation, as I said, is how much somebody can afford to pay, how much somebody wants to get. Okay? And if there's a meeting point there, deal is done. So they could afford to pay, and particularly I think if you take, and I did try to peel back some of the numbers of Facebook, it was all a question of what you have to believe in. Okay? I see valuation the other way around, particularly when evaluating, what do I have to believe? What are the 1 or 2 things that I have to believe to justify this? And I think the 1 or 2 things that you have to believe to make that justification using Facebook's valuation multiples, not using some our DCF methodology multiples. Facebook valuation multiples, if you use, what you have to believe in is not unbelievable. You can probably reasonably say, yeah, that will happen. And if the markets continue to reward Facebook the way they currently do or did, it's okay.
Sir, not always acquisitions or mergers might be planned. So, for example, I worked with Merrill Lynch, and then we got taken over by Bank of America. The sentiment at that point of time was very different. So people from Bank of America had this feeling that okay, these guys have been dumped upon us. The systems have been dumped upon us, and this has happened in reality. This has been talked about in various literature as well. So this was really one aspect of it. We spent like almost a year and a half just to get over this feeling. And then when it came to integrating or standardizing processes and systems, because this was really critical. Wherever we had an overlap, we had to standardize processes and systems. Again, there was a lot of reluctance from both sides. So in certain areas, for example, in the banking area, Bank of America thought that probably we are superior. on the investment banking side, Merrill Lynch thought we are superior.
Yeah.
Again, the people dynamics were very different. So your take on things like.
Yeah, so and I don't, without commenting on the specifics of BOI Merrill Lynch situation, I think a lot of the banking deals that happened in the last few years are not necessarily that people, I don't think they're what you would do in an ideal situation, many of the deals, okay. I think they're all an outcome of what, because of the financial crisis, everyone's been trying to create something out of the mess that is there. If you're thinking strategically and if that's really what you want to do, one of the important elements of integration, and when you analyze integration, is culture. Okay, and the alignment of people culture is very critical to making a deal work. And if you don't find that, but you still want that because of some defensive move, or you want to make A plus B is obviously greater than A or B, then you integrate in a different way. Okay. So the other problem is that people try and use the same integration principles for when the cultures are completely aligned and when the cultures are completely misaligned. You can't integrate in the same way. If, just to take your point, if there was such a high degree of culture issue and resentment issues, maybe Merrill Lynch should have kept, Bank of America should have kept Merrill Lynch separate for a while, till they figured out how to integrate the culture. So it's not necessary that it has to become part of one. I don't know how the integration exactly happened. I know some friends, so I was good, some sense, but take the Facebook WhatsApp thing. Now, if your reason you are acquiring WhatsApp is not to make WhatsApp a feature of Facebook, you want that as a separate platform, then you can't integrate it the way you would integrate some other platform or some other feature that you acquired and put in there, and kind of that identity disappears. WhatsApp continues pretty much as a standalone identity till now, at least thankfully. I haven't seen any Facebook ads on WhatsApp, right? So they've kept it separate. So maybe that's the way to go. I'm just saying the culture issue is very important, and the culture and many other business logic determines the model of integration that you use. There is not one model, there are many models of integration.
By the way, in this particular case, business and financial considerations really made sure that the integration happened pretty well. Now we have got real examples wherein the investment bank is doing a deal and the bank is financing.
Yeah, I know. No, see, the business logic probably existed a lot, but the model of integration, people planning that also, see, many of these deals happen kind of overnight in secrecy. Some two top people, few people discuss and shake hands and say, let's get a deal done. They announce it. Okay, and then they scramble to figure out how to integrate. But if you have done enough time, due diligence, all the planning, then you can do integration better.
So, sir, you work in the M&A role, right? And my question, which I'm very curious about, is, say, if you are working for a company which is doing very well, growing at a different size, so what will be your day-to-day job like? Will you keep on looking for deals out there in the market, or what is the process?
So as I said, since my job was not M&A, I didn't have to look for deals on a day-to-day basis. Right? Yeah, saying, yeah, and that's how it should be. Okay, but I had a team of people who were doing only M&A or who were working on M&A, because as I said, for specialization purposes, and those people could change. Right, some people move from kind of other business roles to M&A and vice versa. But the M&A. So yes, you keep your eyes open for what's happening. You talk to bankers. It's a very highly networked place. So you need to keep your eyes and ears open for what's happening, who is selling, who is buying, and then you also do proactively. So if I need on this area, I want to look for a candidate. I want to build this product capability or this technology capability. Then you go look for possible companies that you could acquire. Are they likely to be acquired? Then maybe you call someone, call a banker and say, or maybe there's a private equity owner, so you reach out to the private equity informally and say, what do you think? Is a deal possible? So all possible ways of finding deals that you have to do. Maybe one last question. Yeah, I think we're run out of time.
Just curious, so when you compare mergers with acquisition, are the same set of challenges because, or are there completely different kind of challenges which comes in?
I think technically, now I see merger and acquisition as more a legal and a technical difference rather than in the strategy or in a business sense. Okay, it's how the laws are defined of whether it is a merger because is it a resulting entity or you acquire ownership of the, say a merger creates one entity out of, and it's all legally. For me, when I think of an acquisition, it could take the shape of a merger from a business structure perspective. But corporate structure may be an acquisition. I may acquire it and make it a subsidiary, but those people are as if they are part of one whole. So I don't see a difference between merger and acquisition in a business sense. For me, you are acquiring that business, even if you are ultimately merging the two entities. I think the Teleglobe acquisition was a merger deal because we created one subsidiary, we merged that with the Teleglobe company, and therefore all of it became a subsidiary of Tata Communications. So merger or acquisition is a legal construct of how the entities kind of amalgamate, become one, or remain two separate entities. Business wise, the decisions are different. They're not concerned with it.
Thank you, Mr. Addepalli, for sharing your experience and wonderful insight. And the way you explained how merger happened, the IT part of it, and how the integration happened before that was quite insightful. And we look forward to take your lecture very soon, in our term 4 maybe. Thank you very much. And we have a high tea after this, and I request all of you to join us in high tea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your active participation.
We have a small memento from our side.
Thank you.